Hi, this is Robert Clickybeard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. We're going to take about 30 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders, business owners, to provide you some great Ironman mindsets to help you scale your business, to become a better leader and push yourself out of a comfort zone into something that's going to stretch you. We hope you really enjoy these shows and encourage you to like and share with your friends, your network, family members. Try and get a wider audience and improve our industry. On each show, I'm going to try and pull out one type of Ironman mindset, insight that you can take back to your business. And if you're implementing one insight every single week or all the shows, then it's going to make a dramatic improvement to your business. Super excited as well to share that we're partnering up with Boss Business Management Software, which is the ultimate cloud-based solution providing comprehensive insights and tools to optimize performance. Join the Boss community today and transform your business so you too can say, my boss is working for me. Cheers, everyone.
Hi, this is Robert Clickybeard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. Really excited today to be joined by a good friend of mine, Steve Steele.
Thanks, Robert. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to see you, Steve. I always enjoy our conversations, and even though I get flustered by numbers, it's probably one of the important parts of our industry, just to understand your numbers.
It's critical. The reason there's so much consolidation in the industry over the last few years is because people finally took an interest in their numbers. And that makes it even more important if you have not consolidated to understand what your numbers are. Your competitors certainly do.
Steve, for the people that do not know you, which is they should get to know you, is tell everybody about your background, Steve, and the industry, and even before the industry, just where you're at right now.
Sure. I like to joke that I kind of started in the green industry and I'm sort of finishing in the green industry. I got a paper route at 11 and I quickly figured out that I could make a lot more money for my clients mowing lawns and shoveling walks than actually delivering the newspaper. So I kind of got my start there, but I didn't get back into the industry until basically my third career. So I spent 10 years in retail level management, where I kind of got my appreciation for numbers and being able to understand what was selling and what wasn't and why. I followed that up with 10 years at ADP. On the professional employer side and ran all of the payroll operations for the client base there. And then in 2005, I had an opportunity to move back into the green industry. A person I'd known that had founded a landscape company here in Denver was getting ready to retire. He was on a 10-year buyout with his partner. He wanted to make sure that that investment was going to stay around for 10 years and do its payout. And so I functioned as I guess as close to a CFO as that company had. I did the financial and business operations, and the owner did the sales and the field operations, and grew that business significantly to the point where in 2016, he sold to Heartland, exited in 18, I exited in 19. And then in 2020, I thought it'd be a good idea to start my own thing during COVID. So I had 7 years of experience with Bruce Wilson in a peer group. Reached out to Bruce, and he thought maybe my background and skills would be a good match for the Wilson 360 client base. And so I've functioned as the financial and business practices leader for Wilson since 2020. So really happy to be here. I've got a master's degree in finance and accounting. If that means anything, the first thing I tell people is I am not an accountant, never wanted to be. I knew after Accounting 101, I didn't want to be a CPA, but I do enjoy taking data from disparate systems and bringing it together to tell a story so that we can use that from a management and leadership standpoint to make smart decisions.
I know this time of year you're involved in some strategic planning. You help companies do a lot of sort of budgeting. You also look at just the pricing structure as they go into next year. Yeah. Tell us maybe some of the things that still surprise you when you go into companies, or maybe some of the stuff you see that can be either red flags or easy fixes for you as you start to peel back the layers.
Yeah, I think, again, the thing that I continue to see is companies that are making money and have absolutely no reason or no understanding of why. Right? They say, I've got money left every month, so I know I'm making money. I just don't know why I'm making money. And so part of the analysis that I go through with companies is helping them understand how their financials line up with a standard green industry profit and loss. Sometimes that means making recommendations about things they could do to get better visibility. If they're on a system like Aspire or Boss LM or another operating system, maybe LMN or SAP, there are things we can look at reporting wise that can help give them better understanding of why they're profitable. On the pricing side, companies oftentimes forget that they need to review that pricing on a regular basis. And so it's not uncommon to work with companies who have never changed the markups in their system. They've never changed the cost for things like their wage items in the system. And those are things that should be reviewed at least once annually, but a lot of times a couple of times annually. And so working with companies to help determine what those costs should be in their system and what the markup should be so that they can reach their goals.
Obviously you go in and just help some companies with some of the strategic planning or strategic direction. And obviously if you're peeling back the numbers, identifying where they're making money, does that then help guide them on, maybe they should be focusing on these certain clients, or maybe they look at this certain service delivery, plant healthcare or trees or something, rather than some other areas that are maybe not making them any money. Does that help, I suppose, open their eyes to help make some of those decisions, whether it be a 1, 2, 3 year plan?
It absolutely does. Once you understand where you're making money and why you're making money, I think that's where the strategic planning discussion kind of starts. I think oftentimes when companies do a strategic plan, they don't think about the budget implications. And so I like to help companies understand that the strategic plan should go hand in hand with your budget. And if you are setting goals within the strategic plan that aren't consistent with budget performance or with areas that you're strong in, or that you've shown an ability to produce in, then you may need to step back and reassess what that is. And so if you can look at those kind of hand in hand, it definitely gives a much clearer and much more realistic plan that you can follow for the next year.
Yeah. It's not just a case of going in and meeting for 3, 4, 5 days. There's a lot of prep work that goes into it. And it's really a complex matrix of decisions because, you've got the financials, which is part of it, the budgets. Hand in hand in that is investments in capital purchases, it's investments with people. You're going to be hiring more people to help your growth plans, and also outside the financial piece, but you've got the feedback from clients, you've got feedback from employees, and all that needs to sort of mesh together to be able to provide. You have to keep talking about data a lot, provide that data for you to make some really key decisions. Because, I think a lot of people don't have that data, and I really struggle to understand how they can make really informed decisions for the future of themselves and also their employees.
I think a lot of times people have access to more data than they think they do. It's understanding how you can take different pieces of that information and get the information you need to make a good decision. But there's also certain ways that people like to look at data, right? Some people look at a spreadsheet and it doesn't matter what's in there or how valuable the data is. It's not presented in a way that is meaningful or action worthy for that individual. So from a data analysis standpoint, it's critical to be able to understand data in a variety of methods, right? You have to look at graphs, you need to look at ratios, but present it in a way that the audience, whether it's a manager or an executive, are getting it in a format that allow them to easily digest it and then understand what decision needs to be made based on that data.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes into play when, if they have a coach, they have a mentor, some type of expert to be able to ask the right questions as well. Because it's great to have the data in front of you, but there's the understanding of the data, but then asking the right questions. See that with some of the companies you work with?
Yes, very consistently. In fact, if you think about one of the most popular software platforms right now in the industry is the Aspire platform, and there is a plethora of information in there, but it takes a skilled individual to extract the pieces of data out of that system and put them into a format that's meaningful to where the company can make the decisions that they need to make. There's data scattered all over the place. And whether it's in the Aspire system or in your own operating systems, you've got data. It's not always in the same place and it's not always in the format that you need. So while you've got transactional people on staff, right, your AP folks, your AR folks, your controller, they are typically transactional oriented people. They're good at balancing things. They're good at making sure that stuff gets into the buckets where it needs to be. But it sometimes takes a little bit different individual to be able to take all of those raw numbers and bring them together to form a meaningful picture.
Switching directions here, Steve. Nice to have that data, that financial transparency in front of you. A lot of companies will leave it too late. My feeling around it is, they'll get their financials maybe the 10th, 15th or so of the month, but it's looking back in the mirror. What happened? And then by the time they analyze, they make some decisions, it might be later in that month as well. So you've got 2 months of, not being able to course correct. Now, I know you've been doing some amazing stuff with some of your financial dashboards, and, that's why I thought it'd be good for you to come on to the show, was just talk about some of the stuff that you're doing on a, weekly, monthly basis with some of your clients, because, I think it's just mind-blowing some of the stuff you're sharing with them and allows that quicker course correction.
I'm a firm believer that, good financial management comes by looking at the things that are in front of you, right, and controlling those rather than looking in the rearview mirror. I'm not going that way. So why look back? Look at how well rearview mirror management worked for the guys that were running the Titanic. Right? If they'd have known they were going to hit an iceberg and sink, they probably would have taken measures ahead of time to avoid the iceberg. And that's what financial dashboarding, I think, really encompasses, right? It's not all looking in the rearview mirror. Some of it is, right? Some of it is benchmarking against historical performance and understanding what you can expect based on that. But the goal of the dashboard that I do for my clients is to give you data that you still have time to impact and change. So from a weekly standpoint, we look at data that looks at where you're at today and says, how are you performing against the same month last year? How are you performing against your budget for both the current month and the year to date? How are you doing that at the division level, at the branch level? Is it taking you more hours to produce less revenue or the same revenue? If it is, that tells us some things about how you're functioning within the company. So the dashboard's really pretty comprehensive and gives you data in a lot of different places, a lot of tabs. If you want me to share out some information, I can certainly do that.
Yeah, and that's, I know some of this. I think you're going to show a sample example, but it's super cool from what I've seen. So go ahead, Steve, and hopefully the listeners right now are able to see. Jump onto YouTube. We have our Commercial Landscaper podcast YouTube channel, so we'll give you a chance to visualize some of the stuff that Steve's showing.
Way too much to go through here in just the limited time that we have, Robert, but there are a number of tabs here. And I guess to look at things from a very broad perspective, the dashboard is set up to appeal to a number of different levels. So what you see here is the operations dashboard. It really gives mostly information through graphs so that you can see how you're performing in some key critical metric areas like gross profit per hour, sales versus budget, company gross margin, your last 12 months of gross margin, dollars per direct labor dollars, some of those things. But there's also some data up at the top, that's kind of dense. It breaks it down pretty easily into how I'm performing at a division level for actual sales to budget for the current month, what the variance to budget is, what my production hours this month are compared to last year to date, and what that variance is. And I get that for both the month and the year. And that can give me at a glance some very important, critical information about how my teams are producing. Am I staying on track with production targets? Am I staying on track with sales? And if not, at a glance, it's right here and informs me about what corrections I need to make during the month that can still ensure I meet the revenue goals and the production goals that we've set. There are a lot of other tabs here for your dashboard tabs. So there's similar dashboards for the executives and for the financial folks. And we've got some dig in tabs that allow you, once you see a very high level problem, what I call dig in tabs that allow you to really get into the nuts and bolts of the data and understand and pinpoint what the root cause of that issue might be. And within a system like Boss LM or Aspire, LMN, there are a lot of different places you could look. Dashboard like this consolidates that information into one place so that it's easier to find the issues. One of the things that I found helpful when we do these weekly updates is to provide what I call a headline report to the client. And the headline report really breaks down the high-level view of the business into some pretty simple terms. Newspaper-type headlines that say, hey, here's how you're producing revenue, gross margin, direct labor, net operating income versus budget and year-to-date goals. And then some individual divisional data that tells you how each of your divisions within the company are performing. Are you ahead of budget for revenue? Are you behind? Are you ahead or behind on gross margin? How are you doing on production hours? And some critical financial data, like how much cash do I have? How does my AR look? How's my AP look? My debt to equity, ROA, ROE, EBITDA, those kinds of things. So all of the things that as a high level exec or as a division manager, you might need to have at your disposal in order to know how the company's trending for the month, how your business division is trending for the month, and what course corrections you might need to make right now in order to still impact that outcome to a positive end.
No, this is super cool stuff. I love how, again, you've got the red and the green, which, pretty self-explanatory, on track, off track. You've got the different tabs at the bottom. And I've seen some of your reports where you talk about that headline reports, and I think that's where the beauty of you being in the industry is super helpful because, you made a comment earlier about you're not a CPA and you have no desire to be a CPA.
Right.
But the fact that you're pretty familiar with numbers, but you can then apply them to our industry.
Right.
It's super helpful. Do you have any examples you could give, Steve, or maybe, some common stuff you've seen, or maybe some recent stuff you've seen where, you've really seen making a big difference? Sure.
I think in almost all cases, it centers around labor management, and what dashboarding allows you to do is to understand from a labor management standpoint what impact that has on the company. Every single job that you bid has a budget for hours. Every single division that you have has a budget for gross margin. If you make your gross margin numbers and you do a pretty good job of keeping your overheads at a consistent percentage of revenue, then you're almost always going to win. But where we see people struggle is they don't manage their labor. Case in point, if you don't have a good pipeline, what happens with your guys? Most of the time, they're showing up and you're going to send them to work in another division where they may not be as productive. Maybe you have them do some work around the shop, right? They're doing stuff, but it's not stuff that is billable or profitable work for the company. You have to remember, from a management standpoint, if you don't have some type of an accountability process in place for overtime, and you don't do a good job of making sure that all of the time your team spend out in the field is billable time, they have a budget of their own. They know exactly how many hours they need to make their bills and live the life that they need to. And if you don't manage that, if you send them out for 30 hours of work, I guarantee you that at the end of the week, there's going to be 40 hours of work on there, whether it was really profitable or not. And what happens is those 10 unprofitable hours by individual, right? So if you're talking one crew that has 30 hours of billable work and they work 40, that's 30 hours, 30 man hours that you've wasted that week. That cost erodes your gross margin and it comes right off of your net operating income. Something as simple as managing the labor hours every day can pay off in terms of multiple points on the bottom line.
Yeah, and people could talk about, culture being super important. I agree it is important, but the guys on the crews, or the girls on the crews are going to be happy because they're still getting their hours, they're still getting paid. It really comes down to, and process comes into this a little bit, but it really comes down to accountability. Who's managing the crews? Is it the foreman? Is it the supervisor? Are they motivated? Are they incentivized? Are they doing the right things to effectively manage those hours? And, you could get good lip service from people, but you really have to have those checks and balances. And I think that's this dashboard, probably along with timesheets and maybe, your financials will show, if you're looking and asking the right questions, they'll quickly show that stuff.
Exactly. It's not hard once you bring data into this type of a format to understand, where you're killing it and where you need to make some adjustments. And I think for the majority of leaders out there, their gut tells them exactly where those issues are. The nice thing about having data is that you no longer have to only rely on your gut. You can use the data to back up the conclusions that you've already come to.
Yeah, and I talk about trust but verify. Yes, right. You trust your crews in the field, but you need to have verification. And I think the financial dashboard piece, plus the results on the ground, plus maybe feedback from your clients, then that's this verification piece.
Absolutely. And I don't know of any company that I've worked with that has successfully moved to make the change on effectively managing hours that has not seen an increase in the efficiency of the crews, an increase in their gross margin, and a resulting increase in their net operating income.
You've got any good examples out there without naming any companies, but maybe any examples of you've seen that sort of management of the hours, management of the gross margin has made a big shift, whether it be a certain percentage of savings in hours, whether it be a certain percentage in shift in gross margin percentage, and that's fallen to the bottom line. I'd love to just hear some examples.
Yeah. I have worked with a handful of companies that have struggled with the labor management piece mightily, and bringing these types of numbers into focus for them kind of does two things, right? It takes the guesswork out of it. It also makes them not the bad guy anymore. They don't have to be the ones to say you're not being productive. They are the ones to say, hey, let's figure out a way to collaboratively work through this and put some accountability structures in place. Let's not just assume that every crew is going to work 2 hours of overtime every day in the summer. Let's put some accountability structure around it without eroding the client experience. I would say on average, in those cases, those companies have improved gross margin anywhere between 5 and 8 points. Okay. And in a thin margin industry like maintenance, right, that's a significant change. And these are not primarily maintenance. They're maintenance centric, but their whole portfolio is not maintenance. So there are some other areas where they're gaining some efficiencies as well. But maintenance, managing that schedule, not letting scope creep come in, making sure that they're not over-servicing the property, that they're servicing it within scope, that they're not doing things just because they always do them, right? Maybe I weedy every week, right? Well, guess what? In July, stuff's not growing. So you don't probably need to weedy. So you can probably get in and out of there a little bit quicker. Might not need to do curb edging every week. Managing those things at the production level can help manage the hours every bit as much as making sure that people are not working more than they need to.
Somebody listening to this podcast and thinking, yeah, I do a terrible job of managing my numbers. I don't know the story behind them. I need some help. What would be, if they were to engage in someone like you or another fractional CFO, what would be some of the things to do in preparation to just get ready for somebody coming in and taking a deeper dive at the numbers?
I think there are a number of pieces. Number one, understand your labor, right? Understand how many people you have working in each division. Understand what your payroll burden is. So make sure that it's a consistent burden with others in the industry. In other words, there are a million different ways to calculate burden. What we want to look at is what your actual direct cost for that employee is, payroll taxes and workers' comp. right? You could argue uniforms and time off and all of those things, but those are overheads that you need to cover. Know what your costs are, and then understand what you need to do from an oversight standpoint to watch those numbers and to pull those numbers together out of your systems. If you've got multiple operating systems, one of the first things you can do is figure out whether or not there's a way to either integrate those systems or consolidate systems. Because the more drawers that you've got data in, the harder it is to find it, bring it all together. Most companies work on one or two from a financial and production standpoint. So make sure that you've got a good close process in place, that you're keeping your financials up to date, that you understand your financials, and that you have people on staff that understand how to do the transactional work that needs to be done to get things in the right buckets. That's one of the biggest things people can help themselves with, making sure that their financials are laid out in a manner that helps them achieve and get the data, get visibility to the data that helps them achieve their goals. So if you've got all of your payroll burden in one account, that doesn't do very much for helping you understand what your direct cost is for payroll or what your indirect cost is. So really challenge your chart of accounts, break it out where it makes sense, but don't break it out at a level that gives you a lot more data than you actually need.
Great advice, Steve. How do people get in touch with you, Steve? Just maybe they want to pick your brains, maybe want to engage you. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's just Steve Steele. You can get me at steve.steele@wilson-360.com. I'm sure that we'll have an opportunity to put up the Wilson website. www.wilson-360.com is the website where I think you can get hold of me or anyone else that's on the Wilson team.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate your time, giving us some insight in what not only do you do, but also, how can people get more transparency with the numbers, pull the data they need, make the right decisions around that data, having that better transparency. So awesome shares, Steve.
Don't put it off. Figure it out. It's like going to the doctor. The longer you delay, the worse it might be. So get some visibility now. And if you need help, reach out, whether it's me or somebody else.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Steve. Take care. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Robert.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today, and you got some great Ironman mindset takeaways for your business or your leadership role. This is Robert Clickybeard. Love to get you, your friends, your employees to join us in our future journey. So please subscribe to your various podcast channels. Visit our website, commerciallandscaper.com or wilson-360.com. You could check out our digital courses. You could check out peer groups, coaching, my book, Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. And we just want you to have a pure, dead, brilliant day. And finally, thanks again to Boss Business Management Software, which is the ultimate cloud-based solution providing comprehensive insights and tools to optimize performance. Join the Boss community today and transform your business so you too can say, my boss is working for me. Cheers, everyone.